The sound of her scream pierced the silence, echoing through the hallway, sharp and chilling. In that moment, everything froze. My heart stopped. I rushed toward her voice, my thoughts racing. Was she okay? What happened? But before I could make sense of it, I saw her. There she was, my disabled daughter, crumpled on the floor, her small body shaking violently as blood pooled beneath her. Her eyes, wide with terror, locked onto mine, pleading for help she couldn't voice. And then I saw it, a knife gleaming in the dim light, buried deep into her back. The horror of it hit me like a physical blow. How could this happen? Who could do this to her? The person responsible was standing just a few feet away, casually watching, an eerie, almost mocking smile spreading across their face. It was Karen, the same woman who'd tormented us for months, trying to control every little aspect of our lives, trying to make our existence a nightmare. I couldn't believe it. The same woman who had made cruel threats and whispered venomous remarks. The same woman who, in that moment, found it amusing. As she stood there, watching my daughter bleed out on the floor, she laughed. A low, cruel laugh that echoed in my mind. I couldn't comprehend it. How could anyone, any human being, find joy in someone else's pain, especially a defenseless child? The sound of her laughter mingled with my daughter's ragged breaths, a haunting symphony of cruelty. I knew right then that this wasn't just a random act of violence. This was something much darker. And in that moment, I vowed to make her pay for what she had done. But what followed was even more terrifying. What had started as a shocking act of violence was only the beginning of a twisted game, one that neither of us could have ever anticipated. It was a quiet afternoon, just like any other. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over our modest home. My daughter, Lily, sat in her favorite chair by the window, her legs propped up on a cushion as she watched the world go by. She was different from other kids her age. Her mobility was limited, her speech often slurred, but her spirit? Unbreakable. I had always believed that despite her struggles, her life was filled with love, joy, and potential. Every day, I watched her overcome obstacles, one small victory at a time. She wasn't just my daughter, she was my inspiration, my strength. Then there was Karen. Karen was our neighbor, the one whose eyes always seemed to gleam with disdain whenever she saw us. I couldn't put my finger on it at first. There was something off about her, something unsettling in the way she carried herself. She was the president of the HOA, a self-appointed queen who prided herself on having control over every little detail in our neighborhood. Whether it was the color of your front door, the type of plants you could grow in your yard, or even the sound of your children's laughter, Karen had a rule for it. She took it upon herself to enforce them with an iron fist. At first, her complaints seemed trivial. She'd knock on our door to inform us that the tree in our front yard was too tall, that our mailbox was the wrong shade of blue. I didn't pay much attention, dismissing it as her need to control everything around her. But over time, her behavior escalated. Her words became more venomous, more personal. She started making veiled threats, giving me that look, the one that said, "You don't belong here." The more she targeted us, the more I felt like a prisoner in my own home. But I never thought it would come to this. I never imagined that the woman who once scowled at us from across the street would one day become the person who would take everything from me, including my daughter's sense of safety. The tension between us and Karen had been building for months, and each day felt like walking on eggshells. What had started as small grievances, an obnoxious letter from the HOA about our garden's upkeep, a warning about our driveway, had slowly turned into something far more sinister. It wasn't just about rules anymore. Karen seemed to take a personal interest in making our lives miserable, and with every interaction, it was clear that she wasn't going to stop until she had broken us. It began with little things, passive-aggressive comments about how unfit we were for the neighborhood, how our disabled daughter wasn't really what this place was designed for. She even had the audacity to suggest that we shouldn't be living here at all. At first, I tried to brush it off, knowing she was just a bitter woman who found power in her position. But over time, her actions grew more invasive and more malicious. She started showing up unannounced, knocking on our door at all hours. She demanded to inspect our property, claiming that we were violating neighborhood codes that didn't exist. When I'd argue or stand my ground, she'd get a wicked gleam in her eye, almost as if she enjoyed the chaos she was stirring. It felt like she was pushing us toward something, but I couldn't quite figure out what. Every confrontation seemed to end with her issuing a new threat, warning me that the community was watching. One evening, as I sat with Lily, trying to reassure her after yet another run-in with Karen, I noticed something strange. Karen was lurking near our front yard, staring at us from across the street. It was as if she was waiting for something, maybe even hoping we would slip up. I could feel the dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. There was no reason for her to be out there at that time of night, and yet there she was, her eyes fixed on our home with an intensity that unsettled me. I thought about confronting her, telling her once and for all to leave us alone, but I was afraid of what might happen if I did. Little did I know that evening would mark the last night of peace we would have. The next morning, the confrontation I had feared for so long was no longer just a possibility. It had become an inescapable reality. And this time, there would be no backing down. It all came to a head that fateful afternoon, when the world as I knew it fell apart in the most unimaginable way. The day had started like any other, with Lily settled in her chair by the window, her favorite book in her lap. The sun was still high in the sky, casting a warm, golden hue over everything. There was a slight breeze, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to think that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. But then it happened. The doorbell rang, and I instantly knew it was her, Karen. I stood up, my stomach twisting into a knot. I walked to the door, opened it, and there she stood, her cold, calculating eyes locked on mine, a look of triumph in her expression. Before I could speak, she pushed her way inside, brushing past me with a certain air of entitlement, as if she owned not just the street, but every inch of my home. "I've had enough of you and your daughter," Karen sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "You're a disgrace to this neighborhood, and you'll pay for it. This is your last warning." I tried to keep my composure, to reason with her, but I could see that she wasn't interested in dialogue. There was something in the way she stood, too calm, too collected, that sent a chill up my spine. My heart began to race as I realized she wasn't just here to yell or to threaten. She was here to hurt us. Without warning, Karen reached into her bag and pulled out something that made my blood run cold, a knife. I froze, my mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. Was this real? Was she actually going to? Before I could even process the thought, Karen lunged at Lily. She was too fast, too determined. My daughter didn't have a chance to scream or move before the blade sank into her back, deep and unforgiving. The room was filled with the sound of Lily's horrified gasp and then silence. Time seemed to slow down as I watched her crumble to the floor, the blood quickly spreading beneath her. I rushed to her, but as I bent down to cradle her, I heard her laugh. Cold, mocking, full of cruel satisfaction. "You really thought you could escape me?" Karen sneered, her laugh echoing through the room. "This is just the beginning." Her words, laced with malice, echoed in my head as I tried to stop the bleeding, my hands trembling with fear and disbelief. But the laughter was the worst part. She wasn't just taking away my daughter's safety. She was enjoying it. She had planned this. And now she stood there, watching as the life drained out of the one person I loved more than anything. In that moment, something inside me snapped. This wasn't just a petty feud anymore. This was personal, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. But little did I know, this was only the start of a nightmare that would drag me into a battle for justice, one that would expose the darkness lurking behind Karen's perfect facade. The seconds that followed felt like an eternity. My hands were shaking uncontrollably as I desperately pressed them to Lily's wound, trying to stop the bleeding, but it was no use. The blood kept flowing, staining her clothes, the floor, everything. Her face was pale and her breathing shallow. Every shallow gasp she took was a reminder that time was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to save her. Karen, standing there in the doorway, watched the entire scene unfold with a sick sense of satisfaction. Her smile never faltered, her eyes gleaming with twisted amusement. She seemed almost pleased. The laughter had stopped, but the look in her eyes told me that this was exactly what she wanted. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act of violence. It was cold, calculated, and planned. "Don't bother," Karen said, her voice sharp. "It's too late for her now, and there's nothing you can do to stop what's coming next." I couldn't focus on her words. I couldn't focus on anything but Lily. I scooped her up in my arms, my mind racing as I rushed out the door, my thoughts consumed with one thing: getting her help. I screamed for someone, anyone, as I ran down the street, but the world around me felt like it was closing in. Everything was happening too fast, too out of control. I didn't know if she was going to make it. I reached the neighbor's house, banging frantically on the door. When they opened it, I was met with shocked faces. "Call an ambulance." I screamed, my voice breaking as I cradled Lily in my arms. "Please hurry." I could barely hear them as they made the call, the world spinning around me in a dizzying blur. I looked down at my daughter, her eyes half closed, and I couldn't help but feel a wave of helplessness wash over me. I couldn't protect her. I hadn't been fast enough. And Karen had done this. But there was more. Something wasn't adding up. Karen wasn't just some angry neighbor anymore. She was a monster. One who had been hiding in plain sight, and I'd been blind to it. I had no idea what had pushed her to this point, but I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. This wasn't just about Lily anymore. This was about exposing the truth, about making sure she never hurt anyone else. As the ambulance arrived and the paramedics worked to stabilize Lily, I looked up, my eyes burning with fury. Karen was still standing there, watching from the sidewalk, a smug look on her face. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me, but the one thing that kept me going was the knowledge that this wasn't the end. No matter what Karen thought, I wasn't going to let her win. The real battle was only just beginning. The hours that followed were a blur of flashing lights, urgent voices, and the unbearable weight of uncertainty. I couldn't remember much from the hospital, just the cold, sterile smell of antiseptic and the soft beep of machines monitoring Lily's fragile pulse. The doctors did everything they could, but I knew that she was still fighting, still hanging on by a thread. I couldn't shake the image of her lifeless body in my arms, the pool of blood beneath her, and that horrible, mocking laugh from Karen that seemed to echo in my head every time I closed my eyes. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have anticipated, was that the worst was still yet to come. While Lily was in surgery, I was left alone in the sterile waiting room, pacing back and forth, trying to make sense of what had happened. How had Karen gone from being a petty, controlling neighbor to a cold-blooded attacker? I thought I knew her obsession with order, her need for power. But this was something else entirely. This was pure malice. I needed to understand why she had done this, what had driven her to such a violent act. As I sat in the sterile waiting room, a voice in my head kept telling me that something didn't add up. I had to know the truth. And when I finally got the chance, I turned to the one place where I thought I might find answers, Karen's house. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this story. I knew it wasn't just a random act of violence, it was part of something bigger, something calculated, something sinister. I approached her house carefully, staying hidden in the shadows. The lights in her house were dim, but I could still see the faint outline of her silhouette through the curtains. She was pacing back and forth, her movements agitated. Then I saw it, the glimpse of something in her hand, a folder, a stack of papers clutched tightly in her grip. It was at that moment that the pieces began to fall into place. I had heard rumors about Karen, about her shady dealings with certain contractors, about the pressure she'd been putting on homeowners to comply with her rules under threat of heavy fines and legal action. But it wasn't until I saw those papers, those documents, that the truth became clear. Karen wasn't just a neighborhood tyrant. She was involved in something far darker, a web of corruption, intimidation, and manipulation that stretched far beyond her role as HOA president. Those papers? They were evidence. evidence of bribery, blackmail, and deals made under the table with developers, contractors, and even city officials. She had been using her position to control the entire neighborhood to force people into submission. And Lily? Lily had become an accidental pawn in her game, a target because her family refused to be intimidated. The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just a personal vendetta against us, it was a battle for power, a battle for control. And Karen had no intention of stopping until she destroyed anyone who stood in her way. I didn't just want justice for Lily anymore. I wanted to expose Karen for what she truly was, a monster hiding behind a mask of civility. And no matter the cost, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The truth had been laid bare, and with it came an overwhelming sense of urgency. As the days passed, I became consumed with the desire to make sure Karen paid for what she had done, not just to Lily, but to everyone she had manipulated, threatened, and betrayed. But getting justice wasn't going to be easy. Karen had spent years building a carefully crafted image, a facade of respectability. She wasn't just some petty neighbor. She was a powerful, well-connected woman who had woven herself into the fabric of the community in ways most people never noticed. And now, she had the resources to cover her tracks, to erase every trace of the corruption that I had uncovered. But I wasn't about to back down. I took everything I had, those papers I'd found, the evidence of Karen's shady dealings, the countless hours of research I'd pored over, and began working with a lawyer who specialized in cases like this. The fight wasn't just about the stabbing anymore. It was about exposing a system of abuse, a network of people who had enabled Karen's reign of terror. I couldn't do this alone, but I wasn't going to let Karen control this any longer. We filed everything we needed, contacted the proper authorities, and soon the investigation began to take shape. It wasn't long before the cracks in Karen's perfect life began to show. The corruption, the bribery, the illegal contracts, it all came to light, piece by piece. Her allies began distancing themselves, one by one, as the evidence piled up. And Karen? She became more desperate. She realized that her once unassailable position was crumbling, and she fought back, doing everything in her power to silence us. But it was too late. The wheels of justice were already in motion, and this time, Karen wouldn't be able to control the outcome. When the day finally came, when Karen was arrested for her role in the corruption and the attack on Lily, it felt surreal. I stood there, watching as the woman who had tormented us for so long was led away in handcuffs, her smug expression replaced by one of disbelief. For a brief moment, I felt a strange sense of closure. But then I thought of Lily still recovering in the hospital, still facing the aftermath of what Karen had done to her. The battle wasn't over. Justice might have been served, but the scars of what happened would never fully disappear. The hardest part, though, was seeing my daughter begin to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. It would take time, but with each passing day, I could see the spark in her eyes slowly return. The laughter, the joy, the spirit I had always admired in her, it was still there, buried beneath the pain. And it was my job, now more than ever, to protect her, to make sure she never had to face something like this again. But as I sat by her bedside that night, holding her hand, I made a promise to myself. No matter how dark the world became, no matter how powerful the people trying to hurt us, I would always stand between her and the monsters. Karen may have thought she had won, but she hadn't accounted for one thing: the love of a parent, a love that was stronger than any fear or hatred she could throw at us. And in the end, that was the force that would keep us standing no matter what came next. As I sat in the dim light of Lily's hospital room, my thoughts swirled like a storm. The journey we had been through, this nightmare, had shattered so much of what I thought I knew about people, about justice, about safety. But in the midst of the wreckage, something profound became clear. There are moments in life when the world seems too cruel, too unforgiving. When it feels as if there is no light at the end of the tunnel, no justice to be found. But it is precisely in those moments that we must remember something crucial. The monsters we face are not invincible. They may wear masks of respectability, hide behind their power and control, but they are not beyond reach. The strength we find in ourselves, in our love for those we hold dear, is something that no one can take from us. Karen thought she could break us. She thought that by hurting my daughter, by attacking the one person I loved more than life itself, she could destroy everything we had worked for. But she underestimated us. She underestimated the resilience of a parent, the power of love, and the unshakable bond between a mother and her child. We did not give up, and we will never give up. No matter what, we will keep fighting. For justice, for the truth, and most of all, for Lily. Because in the end, it is not the darkness of the world that defines us. It's the light we choose to create, the strength we summon in the face of it, and the way we stand tall together, no matter how hard the fight becomes. And that's the message I want to leave you with today. Never let fear or cruelty silence your voice. Stand firm in your truth and fight for what's right. Because if we stand together, there is no monster too powerful to defeat. This is just one story, one battle. But it's a reminder that we all have the power to confront our own monsters, to rise above the pain, and to emerge stronger than we ever thought possible. If you've been moved by this story and want to hear more, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the HOA Stories. We have more gripping tales of injustice, betrayal, and triumph that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Join our community, and together, we'll uncover the dark secrets lurking behind every corner. Your voice matters, and your support means the world to us. Share this video with someone who needs to hear the truth, and let's continue to expose the real stories behind the headlines. Thanks for watching, and remember, this is just the beginning. The HOA Stories will always bring you the truth. Stay tuned for more.